These are the final images of Anahi Bonus, a young Argentine woman who led a double life. By day, she was a dedicated teacher. By night, she secretly worked as an escort. Her clandestine activities were carefully hidden, and no one suspected the truth. Tragically, Anahi could never have foreseen that her secret life would ultimately lead to her untimely demise. Anahi Esther Bonus was born in 1986 in Córdoba, Argentina's second largest city and the capital of the province by the same name. Her father, Carlos, was a central figure in her life, though her mother's identity remains undisclosed. Sources reveal that Anahi's parents were unwavering pillars of support, working tirelessly to provide a stable and loving environment for their children. From a young age, Anahi loved school and often dreamed of becoming a teacher. Her family remembers her as a curious and hard-working child, devoted to achieving her goals. While many aspects of her personal life remain shrouded in mystery, it is known that Anahi experienced 3 significant relationships in her life. Her first was with Marcos Poli, whom she married at just 18 years old. The couple had 2 daughters, the eldest of whom was born with a disability. However, Anahi's first marriage only lasted a few years, ending due to Marcos's violent behavior. According to her family, Marcos physically and emotionally abused her, even during her pregnancies. Concerned for her safety, Anahi's parents convinced her that Marcos was not a good man and that separating from him was the best decision. Despite the emotional scars from her first marriage, Anahi found the courage to move forward and protect her children. Sometime later, she met another man whose identity has not been disclosed. Hoping to create a stable home for herself and her daughters, she began dating him and eventually remarried. From this second marriage, her 3rd child was born. Initially, things seemed to improve, but over time it became clear that her new husband was also abusive. Anahi endured this second marriage for years before finally reaching her breaking point. She decided to separate and distance herself from him for the sake of her safety and well-being. However, moving on was not easy. Her second ex-husband began stalking her, creating an environment of fear and uncertainty. The situation escalated to the point where Anahi had to file for a restraining order against him and carry a panic button to protect herself in case he tried to approach her. After ending her second marriage, Anahi spent some time single before meeting Nestor Zinistri, a fellow teacher in the municipal school system. Anahi and Nestor began dating and soon entered a relationship. However, those close to her noted troubling behavior from Nestor. While there were no police reports, friends and family said he was extremely controlling and possessive. He demanded that Anahi make video calls whenever she went out alone to confirm her whereabouts. Even when visiting her sister, she was forced to check in via video. Due to Nestor's controlling nature and her past negative experiences with relationships, Anahi decided to end the relationship after only a few months. At that time, Anahi was also facing significant financial challenges. Her first husband had stopped paying child support for their 2 daughters, leaving her to manage her household with limited resources. Although her parents supported her in any way they could, she felt guilty about relying on them. Determined to be independent and provide a better future for her children, Anahi resolved to take charge of her life. She decided to pursue her lifelong dream of becoming a teacher, something she had envisioned since childhood. Her parents fully supported her decision, encouraging her every step of the way as she worked toward her goal. After completing her studies, Anahi began working as a teacher at 2 schools near her neighborhood in Córdoba. She was highly regarded by her students and colleagues, who described her as an exemplary educator. However, despite her dedication and holding 2 jobs, her income was insufficient to support her children, especially her eldest, whose medical condition required significant financial resources. Faced with mounting expenses and limited options, Anahi began considering a drastic step, entering the world of prostitution. To make ends meet, Anahi started leading a double life. By day, she was a respected teacher, and by night, she secretly worked as a prostitute. She kept this part of her life hidden from everyone, her family, friends, and colleagues. Unfortunately, Anahi would come to realize realize in the harshest way possible that there are malicious individuals who can destroy someone's life without reason or remorse. By late 2022, Anahi was living with her parents along with her children. Her parents continued to provide unwavering support, assuring her that she and her children could stay with them for as long as necessary. On Sunday, December 4th, Anahi shared a photo on social media of herself and her family spending time in a field. In the picture, a man was also present, though his identity has not been disclosed. It is known that he and Anahi were seeing each other that night. After the family outing, everyone returned home and went to bed around 2 a.m. Anahi shared a room with her youngest daughter, who was 7 years old, while her older children slept in another room. In the early hours of the morning, her youngest daughter woke up and noticed her mother wasn't in the room. Sleepy and assuming her mother had gone to take a bath, the little girl went back to sleep without giving it much thought. However, when the family woke up the next morning, they were alarmed to discover that Anahi was not at home. What made the situation even more concerning was that all of Anahi's personal belongings, her cell phone, wallet, and ID, were still in the house. These were items she would typically take with her whenever she went out. There was another detail that puzzled her family. In the middle of the night, Anahi had sent a message to the school where she worked, informing them that she would be absent that day because she supposedly needed to take one of her daughters to the doctor. Her parents found this odd as there was no doctor's appointment scheduled for her daughter. Their anxiety deepened when, in the afternoon, the school where Anahi worked called to report that she had not shown up and had not provided any reason for her absence. Anahi was known for being responsible and reliable, and it was completely out of character for her to miss work without notifying someone. Alarmed by this news, her parents immediately went to the police to report her disappearance. The fact that Anahi had left without her cell phone complicated the investigation. With no device to track her location or retrace her movements, the police had little to go on. Compounding the difficulty was the fact that her family was unaware of her secret nighttime activities. This led authorities to initially overlook the possibility that her disappearance could be linked to her work as a prostitute. Instead, they pursued other lines of inquiry. Given Anahi's history of abusive relationships, early suspicions fell on her ex-partners. The men were summoned to the police station to provide statements as part of the investigation. Meanwhile, Anahi's family, students, and colleagues took matters into their own hands by organizing search efforts and launching a social media campaign to spread awareness about her disappearance. The case quickly gained widespread media attention, with news outlets publishing images of the missing teacher and sharing updates on the search. On December 13th, the police received their first significant lead in the search for Anahi. Investigators gathered testimonies from several witnesses who claimed to have seen her on the night of her disappearance. Among them was a taxi driver who reported driving Anahi from her home to downtown Córdoba that evening. The driver mentioned that Anahi was a regular customer and that he often drove her to that area during the early morning hours. The taxi driver recalled dropping her off near a shopping center, where she walked to a familiar corner where she often waited for clients. Following his testimony, and with the assistance of neighbors who provided footage from home and business surveillance cameras, the investigators were able to reconstruct Anahi's movements after she left the taxi. The surveillance footage showed Anahi standing on the corner, where she was first approached by two drivers who seemed to inquire about her services before driving away. She remained at the corner for some time until, at 1:23 a.m., a man approached her on foot. The two exchanged a brief conversation lasting about 30 seconds before walking together toward a nearby building that housed a hotel. The police suspected that Anahi and the man might have known each other, given how quickly they left together. However, one unsettling detail in the footage caught their attention, raising new questions about what might have happened next. The surveillance footage revealed no evidence of Anahi leaving the building, but that wasn't the only alarming discovery. Cameras captured the same man exiting the building 11 times the following day, each time carrying trash bags and several backpacks. By reviewing additional surveillance footage from the area, investigators observed the man disposing of the bags and backpacks in various garbage containers. In their investigation, police spoke with several sex workers who operated in the area and identified the man as a regular client who worked at a nearby bakery. Acting on this information, authorities obtained a search warrant for the hotel where the encounter had taken place. It was uncovered that the suspect had been renting a room there on a monthly basis as part of a long-term arrangement with the hotel. During the search, the police did not find Anahi or any definitive clues about her whereabouts. However, they discovered several troubling pieces of evidence, items of Anahi's clothing and bloodstains that appeared to have been poorly cleaned. Additionally, investigators found sharp objects, including knives and a saw, as well as books and artifacts linked to black magic, spiritism, and human dissection. Further examination of the suspect's cell phone and computer uncovered an obsession with disturbing content, further deepening the mystery surrounding Anahi's disappearance and raising chilling questions about what had occurred. The suspect's possessions included numerous photos and hours of uncensored videos depicting gruesome crimes. The blood samples and tools recovered from his hotel room were sent for analysis to determine if the DNA matched his or someone else's. Shortly after his arrest, the suspect's identity was revealed: Santiago Alberto Campos Matos, a 37-year-old man. According to reports, Santiago was born in 1985 and endured a troubled childhood. His father abandoned him, and he suffered abuse at the hands of his stepfather. Experts who later evaluated him suggested that these experiences played a significant role in shaping his criminal tendencies. At 19, Santiago was admitted to a rehabilitation center for drug addiction. After completing the program, he relocated to Córdoba, where he began a new chapter of his life. In Córdoba, Santiago formed a relationship with a woman named Natalia Rodriguez. The two lived together for 15 years and had 2 daughters. Throughout his life, Santiago worked a series of jobs, and at the time of the incident, he was employed as a kitchen assistant at a local bakery. Neighbors described Santiago as a quiet and reclusive man who rarely left his hotel room, where odd noises were sometimes heard late at night. Some hotel guests recalled that, just days after Anahi's disappearance, Santiago disposed of a mattress, claiming it was old and uncomfortable to sleep on. The police suspected that Santiago disposed of the mattress because it could contain incriminating evidence. Acting on this lead, authorities began searching nearby dumpsters to locate it. Investigators also discovered that Santiago had missed work for at least 5 days following December 5th. When questioned, he claimed he had been mugged and even displayed visible injuries to support his story. Further digging into Santiago's past uncovered a disturbing history. In November 2021, he had been arrested for attempting to assault 4 girls aged between 10 and 11 years, friends of his daughters. According to reports, Santiago came home intoxicated and tried to take advantage of the girls. Their mothers reported him to the authorities and he was arrested. However, for reasons that remain unclear, Santiago was released after serving just 3 months in prison and the charges were dropped. Despite the mounting evidence linking him to Anahi's disappearance, Santiago denied knowing her and refused to cooperate with investigators. Nevertheless, authorities were convinced of his involvement and began suspecting that they were dealing with a potential serial killer. As they awaited the forensic analysis of the evidence recovered from his apartment, they feared there was little chance Anahi was still alive. Based on the findings so far, Santiago was formally charged with homicide. While Anahi's family held out hope that she might still be found alive, the results of the investigation brought a heartbreaking confirmation of their worst fears. In early 2023, Anahi's family organized a rally to demand progress in the investigation and keep the case in the public spotlight. During the protest, her father Carlos gave a shocking interview in which he accused Nestor, Anahi's most recent ex-partner, of being involved in her disappearance. Carlos speculated that Nestor might have hired Santiago to make her disappear. Following these accusations, Nestor, accompanied by his lawyer, voluntarily presented himself to the police to provide a statement. Surprisingly, Anahi's first husband also came forward, making allegations of his own. He claimed that Anahi's family might be behind her disappearance, accusing Carlos of being a violent man who had previously threatened him. He described Carlos as jealous and manipulative, alleging that he might have harmed his own daughter after discovering her involvement in prostitution through social media. While many dismissed the idea of the family being involved in such a sinister act, others found it to be a plausible theory, given the tension and history within the family. However, all speculation came to an end when the police received the results of the forensic analysis of the blood samples found in Santiago's room. Laboratory tests confirmed that the DNA matched Anahi's genetic profile. This evidence not only refuted all other theories, but also shattered the family's hopes of finding Anahi alive. Anahi's relatives urged the prosecution to hold Santiago accountable for all the crimes he committed, pushing for the harshest possible sentence. They also requested intensified efforts from the authorities to locate Anahi's body so they could bid her a proper farewell. However, as previously mentioned, Santiago had been seen discarding black bags and backpacks into dumpsters, which were later collected by garbage trucks and transported to various landfills. The search for Anahi's remains turned into an unprecedented operation in Córdoba's criminal history. Before launching the search, authorities conducted a thorough investigation, reviewing street surveillance footage and geolocating the garbage trucks that had operated in the area during the time Santiago disposed of the remains. Based on this information, waste management specialists determined that out of the 12 trucks covering the route, 3 had transported waste to the main landfill, while the other 9 had taken their loads to a recycling facility. The search began in March 2023, with a complex operation initially projected to last 5 months. However, the process stretched to nearly a year as tons of waste were meticulously examined in hopes of finding bones, teeth, or any traceable evidence of Anahi's DNA. Tragically, the search yielded no results, leaving investigators certain that Anahi's remains would never be recovered. In February 2024, her grieving family established a memorial at the San Vicente Cemetery as a symbolic place to honor Anahi's memory. Although they could not recover her physical remains, the memorial became a space for loved ones to pay tribute and keep her memory alive. To honor Anahi's memory, her family erected a symbolic tombstone and planted 5 trees at the San Vicente Cemetery. Though her body was never recovered, the memorial became a place of solace for those mourning her loss. Despite Santiago's lawyers arguing for his legal insanity due to alleged mental disorders, in August 2024, he was found guilty of aggravated homicide and sentenced to life imprisonment at the age of 39. During the trial, Santiago presented an alternate version of events, claiming that Anahi overdosed after they began drinking and using drugs in his room. Panicked, he said, he dismembered her body and disposed of the remains in the trash. However, this explanation failed to convince the jury. After reviewing the prosecution's overwhelming evidence, they determined that Santiago's story was a fabrication, concluding he was a manipulative and calculating criminal. Today, Santiago Alberto Campos Matos is serving his life sentence in a maximum security prison in the Córdoba region, a grim conclusion to a case that left a permanent mark on the community.